They were supposed to be celebrating, a night of freedom, laughter, and a fresh start. But before the sun could rise, blood had been spilled, and a woman who had finally escaped her past would never see her future. No one saw it coming. Not her friends, not the bartender pouring the drinks, not the strangers who danced beside her. A drink in her hand, music in the air, a moment of reckless joy, Jameela had no idea she was being watched. That her final hours were already counting down. By the time the screams pierced the night, it was too late. What started as a celebration had become a crime scene, and the man she thought was just a dance partner had transformed into her executioner. How does a moment of joy spiral into tragedy? How does a single night unravel a life built on resilience and responsibility? When desire, intoxication, and unchecked rage collide, the consequences can be irreversible. Before we dive into this shocking case, like this video and subscribe for more chilling tales of love, violence, and betrayal. Jameela Owens had spent most of her life doing the right thing. A 34-year-old nurse, a devoted mother, a woman who had fought hard to build stability for herself and her 3-year-old son, Zaire. She had sacrificed sleep, weekends, and even her own happiness to make sure he never went without. Every overtime shift, every extra dollar saved, every sacrifice, she had done it all for him. Her marriage to Malik Rucker had been her biggest mistake. A smooth talker with empty promises, he had drained her emotionally and financially for years. What started as a whirlwind romance had turned into a nightmare of unpaid bills, endless lies, and betrayal. He had been unfaithful, reckless with money, and manipulative, always making her feel like she was the problem. But she wasn't. She had stayed longer than she should have, believing that love could fix things, that maybe he would change. But Malik was a leech, and Jameela had finally woken up to that truth. The divorce had been a battle, but she had won. And on that Friday night, the ink was barely dry on the papers. She was officially free. Shonda, her best friend since high school, wasn't about to let her spend the night sulking. "You deserve this, Mila," she had said, already picking out a dress for her. "No kid, no Malik, no stress, just us, a few $4 drinks, some music, and we're out." Jameela hesitated at first. She wasn't the type to go out, to let loose. Her idea of a night off was curling up on the couch with wine and a movie. But something inside her, some quiet hunger for life that had been buried under years of responsibility, whispered, "Go. Just this once." The velvet room was alive with pulsing music and neon lights, packed with bodies swaying to the beat. Jameela hadn't been in a club in years, and at first, she felt out of place. But with each sip of her drink, each laugh shared with Shonda, that tension started to melt away. She was laughing more freely, moving to the music, letting the moment take over. And that's when he saw her. Rashad Rah Rah Bennett leaned against the bar, watching her. He was 29, with a reputation that stretched far beyond the club's walls. A man who had spent more time behind bars than in relationships, Rah Rah was the kind of trouble that came with a warning. Born into the streets, Rah Rah had learned early that the world didn't give second chances. His father was gone before he could even remember his face, and his mother, a woman hardened by struggle, had done what she could, but it was never enough. By 15, he was running with the wrong crowd, stealing, fighting, selling. By 18, he had already seen the inside of a jail cell more times than he could count. Armed robbery, drug charges, assault, his record was a map of bad decisions. But women never seemed to mind. He had a way of talking, of making them feel special in the moment. And Jameela, lost in a haze of alcohol and music, was no different. When she playfully twerked near him, just a fleeting movement, Rah Rah saw it as an invitation. He moved in, placing his hands on her waist, pulling her closer. She turned, surprised but not resisting. He leaned in, his lips grazing her ear. "You looking too good to be dancing alone." Shonda's smile disappeared. She knew exactly who Rah Rah was. "Mila, that's Rah Rah," she whispered, grabbing her arm. He's no good. Jameela hesitated, but the alcohol dulled her usual sense of caution. It's just dancing, Shonda. Rah Rah smirked. Yeah, just dancing. He bought her more drinks, whispering in her ear, making her laugh, telling her everything she wanted to hear. He had that effortless charm, the kind that made you forget what you already knew. And just like that, Jameela's night of celebration took its first wrong turn. Rashad Rah Rah Bennett was the type of man your mother warned you about, the kind who could make you feel like the only woman in the world, right before he reminded you that you were nothing. Born and raised in Houston's 3rd Ward, Rah Rah had learned young that power wasn't given, it was taken. His father had been a ghost, his mother too overwhelmed to keep up with him. By 13, he was running with older boys who taught him the rules of survival: never let a man disrespect you, never let a woman think she's better than you, and always take what you want before somebody else does. He had a reputation, one whispered in quiet warnings and bruised faces. Women who had crossed his path never forgot him, but they never spoke too loudly either. He knew how to charm, how to make a woman feel special, but the moment they questioned him, the moment they pulled away, that charm turned to rage. Rejection wasn't something he handled well. He took it personally. If he couldn't have you, he made sure you regretted ever catching his eye. His rap sheet told the story. Assault. Domestic violence. A string of exes too scared to testify, too scared to press charges. A few had tried, but Rah Rah had ways of making people disappear. Jameela had no idea who she was dealing with. The drinks blurred her usually sharp instincts, numbing the little voice that might have told her to walk away. He made her laugh, made her feel desirable, made her forget, just for a moment, that she had spent the last few years feeling unappreciated and unseen. She had spent so long being the responsible one, the careful one. Tonight, she wanted to be reckless. So when Rah Rah leaned in, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered, "Let's get out of here," she didn't immediately say no. Shonda saw the hesitation in her eyes and grabbed her arm. "Mila, you sure about this?" Jameela pulled away with a small, tipsy smile. "I got this, Shonda." Rah Rah watched the exchange, his jaw tightening slightly before smoothing back into that lazy smirk. He didn't like women who needed permission. "Just a little after-party," he said smoothly, slipping an arm around Jameela's waist. "Dre's spot ain't far." Shonda wasn't convinced. "Text me when you get there." Jameela waved her off, too caught up in the thrill of the night to see the warning in her friend's eyes. Rah Rah had been waiting for this moment. He had played the game well, softened her up, made her feel safe. And now, as he led her out of the club and into the night, he knew exactly what came next. Because this wasn't about the after-party. This was about control. The air inside Dre's trap house was thick with smoke and bad intentions. The music was loud, but the energy had shifted. What had started as a night of laughter and liquor had soured into something tense, something wrong. Jameela felt it almost immediately. The way the men in the room watched her now, like she was a prize that had already been won. The way Rah Rah's grip on her waist tightened when she tried to step away. The way the walls seemed to close in. She had made a mistake. "I need to go," she said, forcing a casual tone. She reached for her phone, but Rah Rah snatched it out of her hand. "Nah," he said, slipping it into his pocket. "You ain't going nowhere after the way you was all up on me." Her stomach twisted. "Rah Rah, I was just having fun. I'm not trying to." He grabbed her wrist, yanking her close. The smile he had worn all night was gone, replaced by something colder, something dangerous. "You think you too good for me now?" He sneered, his breath hot against her face. "Bitch, you was all on me in that club. You ain't leaving till I say so." Jameela's pulse hammered in her throat. She yanked her arm back, but his grip tightened. "Let me go," she demanded, voice shaking now. Dre, sprawled across the couch, barely glanced up from rolling his blunt. "Man, chill out," he muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. He wasn't going to help. Jameela's chest rose and fell in panic. She turned toward the door, ready to make a run for it, but Rah Rah moved faster. His hand shot out, wrapping around her throat. The force of it sent her stumbling back against the wall. Her nails dug into his hands, clawing desperately as he squeezed, cutting off her air. Her body thrashed, legs kicking wildly, but he was too strong. Her vision blurred. Her head pounded. And then, nothing. Her body went limp. Rah Rah let go, letting her slump to the floor like a discarded rag doll. Dre finally looked up. "Damn, nigga." Rah Rah stood over her, chest rising and falling, eyes still dark with rage. "She shouldn't have played with me," he muttered. Silence filled the room, except for the music still blaring from the speakers. Rah Rah's hands were still shaking as he stared at Jameela's lifeless body sprawled across the trap house floor. His mind was spinning, the room tilting as the reality of what he'd done set in. She wasn't moving. Wasn't breathing. Wasn't going to get back up. "Shit," he muttered, running a hand over his face. His high wasn't enough to drown out the panic crawling up his throat. "What we gon' do?" Dre let out a long, annoyed sigh from the couch, barely reacting. This wasn't his first time dealing with a body. "Nigga, you the one who did this. We gotta clean it up, that's what." Rah Rah's breath was ragged. He hadn't meant to kill her, at least, not really. He had just wanted to put her in her place, to remind her who was in control. But now she was dead, and he wasn't about to go down for this. Dre pushed himself up lazily, stretching. "Get that sheet over there." Rah Rah moved on autopilot, grabbing the dirty sheet off a nearby mattress. Together, they wrapped Jameela's body up tight, her arms stiff, her head lolling awkwardly to the side. Rah Rah couldn't even look at her face. "We gotta get her outta here now," Dre said, already pulling out his keys. They carried her out the back, making sure no one was around before stuffing her into the trunk of Dre's black Charger. The metal groaned as it shut over her. Rah Rah swallowed hard. He had seen bodies before, but never like this. Never one he had put there himself. The drive to the Trinity River was silent, aside from the hum of the car engine and the occasional sniffle from Rah Rah. The roads were dark and empty, the perfect place to make sure Jameela Owens was never found. When they reached the bridge, Dre pulled over. The river stretched out below them, black and endless. They worked fast, tying bricks from the trunk to her wrapped-up body, making sure she would sink deep. Rah Rah hesitated, staring down at the bundle that had once been a woman with a life, a son, a future. But it was too late for guilt now. Dre gave him a nod. "Do it." With a final push, they sent her over the edge. The body hit the water with a heavy splash, the bricks dragging it down instantly. Within seconds, she was gone. Rah Rah wiped his hands on his jeans, exhaling. "That's it?" Dre shrugged. "If the body don't come back up, yeah." They got back in the car and drove off like nothing happened. But Rah Rah couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The next morning, Patricia Owens knew something was wrong. Jameela was supposed to pick up Zaire at 9 a.m., and she was never late. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts weren't delivered. By noon, Patricia was at the Houston Police Department, pacing as she filled out a missing persons report. "My daughter didn't just disappear," she told the officer firmly. "She got a son. She wouldn't leave him." The police started retracing Jameela's last steps. It didn't take long before security footage from the Velvet Room showed her leaving with Rah Rah. That was all they needed. The manhunt for Rah Rah Bennett had begun. Houston woke up to breaking news: missing woman's body recovered from Trinity River, suspect at large. Jameela Owens' face was everywhere, on television, plastered across social media, shared in community group chats. A smiling photo of her holding little Zaire stood in stark contrast to the gruesome reality of how she was found. The city buzzed with speculation. Some people blamed Jameela, whispering that she had no business drinking so much, no business leaving with a man like Rah Rah. Others turned their outrage toward the justice system, questioning why a man with Rah Rah's history had been free to walk the streets. Women, especially, rallied behind Jameela's name, reigniting conversations about violence, accountability, and the dangers women faced, even in moments meant for celebration. But while the city debated, the police were closing in. Rah Rah was holed up at his cousin's house on the south side, laying low but not nearly worried enough. He had been arrested before. The system had never managed to keep him for long. So when Houston PD kicked in the door at dawn, he smirked. "Nigga, what you smiling for?" One of the officers yanked him up, shoving him against the wall. "You think this some game?" Rah Rah laughed under his breath. "Y'all ain't got shit on me." He thought they didn't have a body. He thought Dre would keep his mouth shut. He thought wrong. Dre had already folded. By the time Rah Rah sat in that interrogation room, his cousin had given it all up, the fight, the strangulation, the disposal of the body. Everything. And with divers pulling Jameela from the murky depths of the Trinity River, her body wrapped in the same sheet Dre described, the case was locked in. Rah Rah wasn't getting out of this one. The trial was brutal. Prosecutors painted Rah Rah as a predator, a man who had spent years intimidating and abusing women. Witnesses were brought in, ex-girlfriends who had suffered under his fists but had been too afraid to press charges. This was no accident, the prosecutor declared. This was a man who believed he had the right to take what he wanted and punish any woman who said no. The defense tried to twist the narrative. They argued Jameela had been intoxicated, that she willingly went with Rah Rah, that things got heated between two drunk people. They implied she fought back, as if that justified what had been done to her. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury didn't need long to decide. 3 hours. That's all it took. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Rah Rah showed no emotion. He sat stone-faced as the judge delivered the sentence. Life in prison. No parole. Dre, in exchange for his testimony, got 15 years as an accessory. The case was over. But for Jameela's family, for little Zaire, for every woman who had ever ignored the warning signs, the pain would never fully fade. Patricia Owens sat in the quiet of her living room, staring at the flickering candle beside Jameela's framed photo. The house, once filled with laughter and the scent of her daughter's favorite lavender candles, felt empty now. The walls held memories, but they could never bring Jameela back. Zaire was asleep in the next room, clutching a stuffed bear Jameela had bought him for his 2nd birthday. Patricia watched him from the doorway, her heart breaking all over again. He still didn't understand. Every so often, he would ask when his mommy was coming home. She never had the words. But Patricia refused to let Jameela's name be forgotten. She threw herself into advocacy, standing before crowds at domestic violence awareness events, gripping a microphone with trembling hands as she told her daughter's story. She wanted justice, not just for Jameela, but for every woman who had ignored her instincts, every woman who had trusted the wrong man, every woman who never got the chance to escape. But no matter how many speeches she gave, no matter how many laws she fought to change, the pain never eased. Shonda barely left her apartment anymore. She kept replaying that night over and over in her mind. The way she had tried to warn Jameela. The way she had watched her wave it off, laughing. The way she had let her leave. If she had just pulled her harder, made her stay, would Jameela still be alive? The guilt sank into her bones, turning into a weight she couldn't shake. She stopped going out, stopped answering calls. The vibrant, carefree woman she once was had disappeared, buried under regret. People told her it wasn't her fault, but that didn't change the nightmares. Rah Rah learned quickly that prison wasn't the streets. His name meant nothing here. The same reputation that had kept people afraid of him outside now made him a target. Inmates who had daughters, sisters, mothers, men who had their own pasts but still had a code, wanted him gone. The first time he got jumped, it was in the yard. A shank to the ribs. He survived, but barely. The second time, they caught him in the showers. After that, the guards moved him to solitary, not for punishment, but for his own protection. He tried to appeal his sentence, but the courts weren't interested. Rah Rah was never getting out. Dre thought he had played it smart. Taking the plea deal, testifying against Rah Rah, it was supposed to save him. But in prison, being labeled a snitch was a slow death sentence. Every day was a battle for survival. He slept with one eye open, ate as little as possible to avoid getting poisoned, kept his back against the wall whenever he moved through the prison halls. 15 years suddenly felt like forever. And every night, when he closed his eyes, he saw Jameela. Saw the way she had fought. Heard the way she had gasped for air. Felt the weight of his silence crushing him. If he had just done something, anything, she would still be alive. Online, the debate never stopped. Some people blamed Jameela. She shouldn't have been drinking like that. She shouldn't have left with him. She should have known better. Others fought back, demanding justice not just for Jameela, but for every woman like her. Protect black women. Hold these men accountable. How many more lives have to be lost before something changes? The hashtags #Justice for Jameela and #Protect Black Women trended for weeks, flooding timelines, forcing uncomfortable conversations. But hashtags couldn't bring Jameela back. Zaire grew up with only faded memories of his mother. The scent of her perfume on an old sweater Patricia kept in her closet. The sound of her laughter in old home videos. The warmth of her arms, something he could no longer truly remember but still felt in the deepest parts of his soul. As a child, he had accepted his mother's absence as something that just was. But as a teenager, he started asking questions. One evening, as Patricia cooked dinner, he stood in the doorway, his voice quiet but firm. "Grandma, why did my mom have to die?" Patricia turned, meeting his eyes. She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. Because how do you explain? Reminder of how one reckless decision, one misjudged moment, can unravel into irreversible tragedy. Jameela Owens was more than just a victim, she was a mother, a dedicated nurse, a woman embracing the promise of a fresh start. But in the span of one night, a celebration turned into a nightmare, and she crossed paths with a man whose violent nature would steal her future away. Rah Rah Bennett was no stranger to violence. His history made it clear that this was never just about one bad night. He was a predator, a man who saw women as possessions, who lashed out when he didn't get his way. Yet, despite the warning signs, he was allowed to roam free until he finally took a life. The question lingers, could Jameela have avoided this fate if she had listened to Shonda's hesitation? If she had trusted her instincts? Or was this tragedy inevitable the moment she encountered Rah Rah, a man who had no intention of letting her leave that night alive? And then there's the justice system. Rah Rah will never walk free again, but was life in prison enough? Should he have faced the death penalty? Did Dre, who stood by and did nothing, get off too easy? More than anything, this case forces us to confront a brutal reality. How do we, as a society, protect women from men like Rah Rah? How many more Jameelas will there be before something changes? If this story shocked you, if it made you think twice about the hidden dangers lurking in seemingly ordinary encounters, like and subscribe for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, violence, and betrayal. Because the truth is, stories like Jameela's are happening every day, and they demand to be told.